POETICS podcast, where we are breathing life into the written word on a podcast. I think that Shakespeare would appreciate it. I think he would also run rampant with podcasts. Could you imagine? I am Tamara Rockwood, and I believe that poetry should be heard. I believe that it needs to be spoken. I think that when you hear it, it enables your soul to understand it beyond the page. So here on Bainbridge Island, where the Pacific Northwest mists the shore on Bainbridge Island, my husband Ben and I run Bainbridge Island Press, and it is a sanctuary for poets who dare to bare their hearts. And we've so far published 9 books. We are working on our 10th right now. And we have express chapbooks that are available not only on the website to read, but also we have a submittable page where you can submit. We also, right now, as of February 8th, I think it's February 8th, we have a few more days. We have about 8 more days left for you to submit some poetry to our POETICS contest for the theme. But today we are doing a podcast, and we want you to enjoy it. Enjoy listening, enjoy appreciating poetry. Poetry is difficult to read because you have to stop yourself in order to read it. It is not a blog. It isn't a tweet. It isn't on social media. It isn't an article. Poetry is very different, and it forces you to stop and listen because all of the words that are used are speaking an entire universe unto themselves. The toolbox of experiences and emotion that the poet is putting into the poem is going to be read differently than the audience, who is going to bring their own toolbox of experiences and emotion to the poem. And so the experience of reading poetry is subjective, and it's fascinating, and that's why you can read the same poem a million different ways, a million different times. You never step into the same river twice. So, settle in, open your ears, and let's discover together how poetry lives and breathes in the human voice. So grab your favorite drink, get comfortable, and join us as we dive into the world of poetry. Welcome to POETICS Podcast. So the poem that we are going to read today is from the collection Time Billionaire by K.G. Newman. That was published by Bainbridge Island Press, and we published it recently. It is such an amazing collection of poems, and we are so grateful to be able to publish it. I enjoyed reading it. I enjoyed formatting it. I enjoyed reading it again after I formatted it. I cannot recommend this collection enough. But this poem is Time Billionaire from the book Time Billionaire. I thought that was a good place to start. I really enjoyed exploring this poem that explores time. It explores time in different ways. But before I get into that, I want to tell you about the author. K.G. Newman is a sports writer for the Denver Post. His first 4 collections of poems are available on Amazon or in independent bookstores. He has been published in hundreds of literary journals worldwide. He is an alumni of Arizona State University. You can find him on social media if you want to. I don't want to put out his handle. I'm sure that you could find it. It just feels invasive. I think that we're going to stick to his poem, but maybe it's not. I don't know. I just want to be very respectful of people's privacy. But more info and writing can be found at kgnewman.com. I would love to share that. He is the poetry editor of Hidden Peak Press, and he lives in Colorado, and he has a lovely family, and he has 4 dogs. He's been delightful to get to know, and he's a wonderfully fascinating person, and I couldn't say more delightful things about him. It's been an absolute pleasure to read his poetry and to get to know him as a person. So we are going to listen to Newman read Time Billionaire, and then we're going to get into a brief analysis of why it is so interesting how he uses objects to tell the story. So here we go.
Time Billionaire. I took apart my watch and hid the pieces around the house. Walked through the park and casually slid my phone into a bear-proof trash bin. Taped pictures of my 2 boys at their weakest and strongest moments to the bathroom mirror, to all the mirrors, until they weren't mirrors anymore, just collage reminders of the sand in my hands. It's like I'm transferring the grains from one bucket to another. So I keep my fingernails long for this reason. I slander the moment after sunset in public. I walk down the street screaming, "Death to electricity," when all I really want is to arrive where the sidewalk meets the beach, where I get a penny for every second I have left and the billion shiny copper circles stack into an infinite oil rig, jacked up, way out there in the ocean.
It's just beautiful. I was sold. So the reason why I think that this is such an interesting story is because it is allowing the objects to tell the story for you. So in the beginning, we have a watch, and he took apart the watch. And then we have a phone, and he hid the phone. And then we have photographs, and they are taped to mirrors, and they eventually overtake the mirrors to become a collage of memories. And then we have sand, which is indicative of time, and there's a lot of sand. It's not just a sand timer, it is an entire beach of sand. And then you have the value of time. You have all of the pennies. That is of value. And then you have infinite time. It isn't something that you can grasp. And then you have the object of the oil rig far away in the ocean, and that is an unreachable place that you can never arrive in. So let's start there and talk about liminal spaces. Liminal spaces are a personal passion of mine. I had my master's degree in, the thesis was the emotional narrative arc of female characters in short stories through liminal spaces. So what that means is when you have a story, there are private spaces and there are public spaces. Private spaces are domestic. They're in the house. They're for family. They're for your personal self, your private self. That is your home. Primarily, that is a private space. The public space is your work. It is your profession. It is conferences. It is where you have your public persona. You will most likely wear a suit in a public sphere. You are going to wear sweatpants in a private sphere, in general. In between those two spaces are liminal spaces. And liminal space is defined as somewhere where you are not supposed to stay. That is what it is. So a liminal space can be a stairwell, a doorway, a window, a closet, a bathroom, an empty warehouse, a hallway, an attic, sidewalks, freeways, trains, taxis, sometimes ships. You are not supposed to stay in the bathroom. That is not a space where you conduct social engagements. You are not supposed to stay in the hallway. So a good example is in Jane Eyre. You have Jane in the House of Rochester, and he is allowing her own private space, which is her bedroom. But when she stays in her bedroom, she is herself. That is who she is in the private sphere. When she is working as a governess, that is her public sphere. That is her public face. And in between those two places is where she not only falls in love with Mr. Rochester, I would imagine. I think that's debatable, but I think that she loves him in her own special way. But she also discovers the wife in the attic. The way that she finds that is through the doorway, in the hallway, up the stairs, into the attic. Those are all liminal spaces that lead her away from her private sphere and takes her into a reality. The liminal space is where you change. You can see this in any movie. You can see this in any book. It is in the hallways. It is in the car chase where you develop into the next character, into something else. So if there is a woman in a kitchen, she is in her private sphere. She is a wife. She's a mother. She's independent. She's different when she gets into her car and goes on a commute and arrives at work. When she is in the conference room, she is a different persona. It's just different hats we put on. In the car, you change. And so in movies, you can see this. They discuss, why did this happen? If you're in a car chase, they're saying, why did this happen? I don't understand. You have to tell me. And when they stop, they arrive at the next scene, which is probably a public sphere. And once they get out of the car, they have realized, they have decided they are a different character. All of a sudden, they understand each other in a better way. These liminal spaces are where we change. And it's such an interesting way to understand how we move through our lives. We can change as we walk downstairs to our coffee. We accept that we are going to work. When we're done, we walk through the door, and the first thing we do is take off our hat and shoes. Thank you, Mr. Rogers. So, that all being said, with this liminal space, is when I'm reading this story, Time Billionaire, he's utilizing the liminal space to change what time means to him. And that is why this is an extremely profound poem. The watch does not sit in his pocket. He does not stare at the hands that are moving. The watch is taken apart, and all of a sudden you have a liminal space in between the physical object of the watch. With the phone, it is hidden in a bear trap. You are not supposed to stay in a bear trap. That is a liminal space. All of a sudden, the phone and the time on the phone is now in a liminal space. It's not supposed to stay there. The photographs are not supposed to stay on the mirrors. They are not supposed to overtake the mirrors to become something else. That is now, mirrors are a liminal space in themselves. The sand does not stay in one place. It is moving through his fingers. It is moving in buckets. The sand is not supposed to stay in the bucket. That is a liminal space that he's utilizing to show how movable time can be, how profound the liminality within time can change how we see time. And so when the pennies come in, that is the value of them. And you need a lot of pennies to make up any value. And that is how we see time. We need so much time to make up a strength of value for the time. When you are with someone you love, 5 minutes is not enough. 5 cents in pennies is not enough. And so you try to collect more, but you're collecting sand, and it is this struggle. It is wrestling with trying to capture this time that you cannot capture. And time becomes this unreachable place that you can see, and you know what it is that you want. You want more time with the people that you love. But it is like the oil rig in the ocean that you can never reach. And I know that I've never been in an oil rig. I think that the oil rig is such an interesting object to use because it was not, I don't know. It wasn't a pretentious object. It was something very clear, at least to, I don't know. I would say to people on the coast, but I think that everyone can understand what that distance means. And I think that that distance was the emotional anchor that ended the poem. And when you're left with it, it is this poet who desires to be with the people he loves longer. And that is a struggle that we all wrestle with. I really enjoyed reading this poem, and I'm so grateful that Newman read the poem for us. And I really hope that you enjoy it. If you would like to read more of his poetry, there's an entire book of these beautiful poems about time. And you can find it on our website. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it at your local bookstore. It's called Time Billionaires by K.G. Newman. I've said it. I loved the book. I really felt like it was such a gift that I was able to read it and publish it and share it with everyone, because I think that everyone should read it. So, thank you so much. All right, party people. That is our podcast for today. If you've enjoyed diving into the world of verse with us, join us next time, where we've got more poets to meet, more poems to explore, and more literary adventures to share. So until then, keep reading, keep writing, and keep poetry close to your heart. Thank you for joining Poetics Podcast, where we bring poetry to life, one verse at a time.